Hello, welcome to The Viewpoint. I am Mboj. First, we wish all our viewers a Happy New Year. My guest today on The Viewpoint is a linguist by training, a founder member of a political party. In fact, he's the first leader, and he also won the party's first seat in Willie West in 1997. He's a formidable parliamentarian, not least because of his fearlessness and his sharp and dispassionate way of tearing into issues. I'm talking, of course, about Mr. Sidiya Jatta, the chairman of the People's Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism. Welcome, sir, to The Viewpoint.
Thank you.
With you as well, I have to wish you Happy New Year.
I wish you the same.
Yes, thank you, sir. I suppose here we can begin where the heat is, if one can call it that, because one of the headline topics of discussion today is the recent National Assembly's rejection of Barrow's nomination for Ombudsman. I wonder, did you vote for the appointment or against?
Well, you know, the Constitution provides in Section 164 for the appointment of the Ombudsman. It provides that the President shall appoint the Ombudsman subject to confirmation by the National Assembly. And that is very important, the word subject to confirmation by the National Assembly. The fundamental reason is that the position of Ombudsman is very important. It is a position of administration of justice, because Ombudsman deals with aggrieved persons, either by administration, by the court, wherever, whatever sector of the society, when somebody is aggrieved, he or she turns to the Ombudsman for his or her complaints to be addressed. So it is not an ordinary person. The view of the National Assembly is that for such a person there should be a thorough research in consultation with some institutions, even in the civil society organization, for identification of a person or persons who are likely, who have the potentiality to perform that function. So the view of the National Assembly was that such a thorough research was not conducted in this particular instance. So the feeling of the National was that the requirements were not met.
So who should have done this thorough research?
The person who had the responsibility to appoint is the person who should do the research.
But didn't the Vice President say that they had to go through the Public Service Commission?
Well, that's, for us, that's not enough. I mentioned civil society organizations, but this is dealing with matters which are beyond just Public Service Commission, you know. So.
But you still haven't said what side you voted. You voted against the appointment.
I think the issue is not voting against or for.
But it surely matters.
The mind of the National Assembly was that the person nominated or appointed by the President does not satisfy the requirements in their thinking of the position of the
National Assembly,
Ombudsman.
But
yeah.
You personally, what do you think? Because we are told that he's got 33 years of administrative experience, and when it comes to probity, personal probity, nobody's heard anything at any rate. So what do you personally think?
There are many things we are saying, so we are even talking about legal experience. But I personally pointed out that the law provides that somebody of substantial administrative and professional experience.
So,
but there is nothing legal, nothing legal is mentioned there. If there is a legal person, fine. That's another profession. That's another experience. But it does not necessarily mean that somebody has to be a legal professional. But somebody who has administrative and profession, any profession. And he considered, I pointed out that the man was a professional because he was an educationist. The report of the committee, which was submitted to the assembly, indicated that very clearly that the person in question is an educationist. And therefore, he has both the administrative and professional experience.
In your view?
In my view.
Then why vote against?
It is much more than that. The position of an administrator of justice is not just having professional and administrative experience. You have to have something much more than that.
But yeah, surely things like judgment, intelligence, that is not the monopoly of lawyers. In many ways, experience, judgment, intelligence.
I agree. That's why my contention was that the issue of legal experience was not mentioned in the Constitution and is not, in fact, a requirement. What was required is somebody must have administrative and professional experience. Once you have that, but it's much more than that. I think the law is saying that, but you must read beyond that, because it must be somebody who is upright.
Is there any suggestion that he is not?
I'm not. You know, one of the speakers in the National Assembly pointed out that who are we to subject anybody's integrity to question in the National Assembly?
In the absence of evidence.
We cannot do
pointing
that.
There's no evidence.
Our role in the National is to defend every Gambian. To defend the interests of every Gambian, whoever that may be. So that was not the issue. We are not subjecting anybody's integrity to question, but we are subjecting people to the requirements of performing a particular function, which is fundamental to the implementation of democratic principles in our country.
That is true. But if we agree that when it comes to administrative experience, in your view, he's got it. When it comes to professional career, in your view, he's got it. When we talk about the personal probity, well, there's really nothing to suggest otherwise that he's not a decent
Well, you know,
person.
You are pushing me into what I have already said. I said, who are you and me to subject somebody's integrity to question in the National Assembly? Is that what we are there for? No. We are there for to see whether a person appointed to perform a particular function, he or she has the means to do that in the interest of everybody. That is our responsibility. And personal experience is one of it, professional experience is another one of it, but then there is much more than that. Because I know you wouldn't want a liar to be the ombudsman, an ombudsman. You don't want somebody who is parochial in making decisions, who is, I don't know, somebody who is in any way not meeting the requirements of that issue of administering justice. If you don't meet the requirements of administering justice, because the word I underline the word administering justice. Yeah. That is the role of the ombudsman. Somebody who deals with aggrieved persons. You need experience in administration and profession, but you need something much more than both those terms.
So what would you call that? The X
uprightness.
One wonders, what would one call that? Because the probity, the uprightness, one already assumes that must be one of the criteria. Of course, when
not
we look
necessarily.
at that.
Not all administrators are upright, are just, and that's why we have problems.
That's it. But
that's why we have problems. That's why people are dismissed unjustly. They are dismissed by administrators. And these are cases that the ombudsman deals with. So it is just not professional and administrative experience, much more than that.
Okay, it will be interesting to see. Apparently, when should the president nominate, he's going to nominate somebody else, then that one you'll have to automatically take it, as I understand the rules indicate.
You know, that was an amendment, one of those funny amendments that were made to the Constitution. Is even indicated under that particular clause, that particular provision. Amendment was done, I think, 2001. You know, so you would understand that the amendment was done to serve a particular interest. And we don't make laws to serve particular interest. We make laws to serve general interest. We don't make laws for persons, individuals. We make laws for society. So if you say that the National Assembly is the one who does the confirmation, and yet you say if they refuse somebody a first time, a second time they should not. If supposing that person is even worse than the first one, what are you going to do? So the position of the National Assembly on that particular provision is that it should be amended, because it's usurping the powers of the National Assembly. It's rendering the National Assembly debilitated in doing what is just. But
as it stands now, the next nomination would have to go automatically. As things
it is not going to be automatic. Supposing they bring it and we don't consider it.
But that's what the law says, isn't it?
No,
but for the second nomination, that one will just have to go.
Well,
we'll have to approve.
No, but for me, for us, that is something that we are. It was raised even in the debate, but it is something that we are going to. So I'm not going to go into discussing it because I don't want to jump the gun.
Yes, I think I've read somewhere that Halifa Saleh, your colleague at PDOIS, has suggested that maybe the president shouldn't be appointing the ombudsman. Do you agree?
I've not heard him say that.
But do you think the president should be appointing the ombudsman? In one of the papers.
Well, there is no harm as long as the appointment would not stand unless it is approved by the National Assembly. For me, that is fine.
So it doesn't matter who appoints, as long as you've got this confirmation clause.
As long as the appointment will never stand until it is approved by the National Assembly. For me, I have no problem with that. But if there is no such a thing, I have a problem. But as long as the National Assembly is there to confirm, you see what has happened. If the National Assembly was not there, the appointment would have stood. But it couldn't, because the National Assembly does not agree with the requirements, the fulfillment of the requirements by that particular individual.
Absolutely.
But I have not heard Halifa mention, maybe, but I have not heard him say it.
Absolutely, but we know that some of the papers have reported that anyway. So let's talk about the National Assembly more generally, the functions. Of course, one of them everybody knows is to make laws. Would you do much more than that? For instance, this confirmation yourself as a check. Let's just go through maybe some of the...
Generally, the fundamental role of the National Assembly is to exercise oversight over the executive. In other words, it sees to the functioning of the executive, what the executive does. Does it serve the interests of the country? If they make suggestions for laws to be made, are those laws in conformity with the mother law of the country, that's the Constitution? Or are these laws that are going to serve the supreme interests of the society? Or are they going to render democracy null and void or defective? That's the fundamental role of the National Assembly. And of course, these type of appointments also, it's not only the ombudsman, but even ministers. I think in the new draft constitution, it is important that, what has been happening, we all know, everybody has been complaining about it. You appoint somebody today, a minister, and tomorrow you dismiss him or her. And no reasons are given. This is an honorable citizen of the Republic. If you give him or her a function as important as a ministerial portfolio, and then you dismiss him or her, society is interested to know why. Because otherwise, if you just keep quiet, you are dishonoring the person. People have different views. They'll tell you, he's incompetent or he's corrupt. So you will have all sorts of thoughts about the person concerned. And that is not correct. But if ministers cannot be dismissed just like that, because they are not appointed by one person, so they cannot be dismissed by one person, fine. It means that there will always be scrutiny to determine whether or not that person should be dismissed or not dismissed.
Yes, the oversight role that you play. That is why some commentators do say that, because you've got the powers and the tools to reprimand government, to restrain it, even sack the executive. So when things go wrong, when there is abuse or inefficiency in government, you are partly to be blamed, because you are the ones who should be monitoring them.
I agree.
How do you respond to that?
If Parliament fails to exercise its fundamental role of oversight, yes, if anything goes wrong, they are blamable.
They share in the blame.
But you must also know, for example, the type of parliaments that we have been having in this country, particularly under the Second Republic. You know, that was a parliament in name, but not parliament in practice, parliament in operation. Because a parliament that is controlled by the executive is not a parliament. And you know, the parliament under the Second Republic, you know, some of you cannot say anything about, because you have never been going to the city to see the city. You must go and see what parliamentarians are doing in Parliament, not just sit over TV and look at them. No, go there and see them.
Our reporters were reporting on parliamentary
issues
it's not all reporters.
The time. Every elector who has the means or the time should go and listen to parliamentarians in operation in Parliament, in the chambers. Not just sit over TV and look at them. It's important, you know, because your presence is also another exercise of it serves as a pressure on MPs in Parliament. Because if they see people around, maybe sometimes they will become hesitant to say certain things. But they are always making sure that what I'm saying is correct.
But perhaps even better to have it live, to have the cameras in there, whereby it's not going to be just who are there, but the whole world.
You know, but
what about that?
That's why
having the cameras in Parliament.
That's why we have a gallery there for people to go there and listen. You know, it's important. It inspires people too.
Absolutely.
It's inspiring, but you can imagine only MPs sitting down in a room talking to themselves. It's funny, isn't it funny?
Well, quite a good number of parliaments, you do find that it can be like that. But
no, well,
people will get their information from the news reports.
You know,
and
but
stuff,
the situations differ.
And the like.
In Britain, parliamentary proceedings are live.
Live, that's my point.
But here you don't make it live.
Have you ever asked for it, demanded it? Have you ever suggested
that was the first question.
That was the first
question I raised in Parliament in 1997.
But still, nothing.
Well, they go there, but they bring it at the time they want it to be relayed over the TV. But I think every session of Parliament should be relayed live.
Food for thought. Of course, apart from the oversight, parliamentarians, you are also representatives of your people.
Yes.
I wonder where you would fall on this debate. I've long heard sort of political commentators, you know, trying to make a distinction between a representative and a delegate. What is a member of Parliament? What's a representative? Am I there to be like a delegate, you know, to take the views of my constituents and, you know, come and faithfully adhere to them in our debates? Or am I allowed, as they say with representatives, am I allowed my own judgment on issues? How would you see this curious little debate here?
A representative is somebody who speaks the mind, who is supposed to speak in the minds of those who elected him or her. That's what representation is about. You know, in normal circumstances, everybody who has a vote is a potential member of Parliament. But we cannot all fit in a room. And even if we can fit, we cannot all talk. We'll be there for ages. Not everybody will be able to talk. But since human beings, what we are, our intelligence helps us to provide a situation where it will be almost akin to everybody being there. What is that? Let us, all those who are mature in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of the law from 18 upwards are all mature people. They know what is good for the country, what is bad for the country. They know what is good for them and the others in society. Those people should elect representatives from among themselves to go and represent them in the National Assembly, to speak on their behalf. When you're speaking on somebody's behalf, that means you are speaking the mind of that particular person. So it is not easy. It's not an easy matter. That's why the MP, the National Assembly member, should have an organic relationship with the electors. The constituents should be organically linked to the MP. Why? Because he or she must know what their thinking is about different problems that are affecting them.
But isn't that the practical difficulty here? Because I cannot see how the constituents can have one mind. You can have many minds, so you're bound to have conflicting views.
Okay, well, let me put it this way. Every constituent wants clean drinking water. Every constituent wants, since they are farmers, they want the means, the inputs necessary to increase their output. Every constituent wants that. Every constituent wants a good health center. Every constituent wants a good school. Every constituent wants a good road everywhere where they live. In other words, every person in a constituency who votes has the desire to have all that is necessary for him or her to live decently as a human person. That is common.
Oh, absolutely.
That's why representation is just about that.
That's it.
Because the monies that you put into the coffers of the nation are the same monies that go back to people in the form of service, in the form of providing these social services that I have just mentioned, and infrastructural development, and of course, providing employment for people. People don't go to school just for the sake of going to school. People go to school in order to work to develop a country, to work in order to have food to eat, to put food on table for the family.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all that you've said, nobody can ever deny. That's what everybody wants. Isn't it often in the how? How do we get it? How? It's always often in the how that you might have different views, and then our wishes will come up against reality.
And that is why that's why you have a budget that goes to the parliament to determine what should go where, why, and how. That's the essence of it. Because our needs are many. They are many and multifarious. But we have, since we don't have too much, what we have is insufficient. We have to classify our needs.
Absolutely.
1, 2, 3,
Absolutely.
4. For example, if you ask me now, what a road and water, what would you prefer in your country? I say I want water, because that is fundamental to my being. People need that. Road is important, but if you say you have money for only one of these, which one would you go for? I say you should go for water, because we cannot do without water. We can do without good roads, because we have been living in this country for centuries without good roads. We are still living, but we cannot live here without water. We cannot live without good health facilities. Huh?
You are right. I mean, you mentioned the budget, but we've seen that the budget 2020 you've approved, even though we keep complaining that there's too much, we are borrowing too much, there's too much, the debt financing is taking away from spending on social services, yet it was approved by the National Assembly. What would you
want us to do, to have done? If we had to, we are in a situation where you are obliged to. This is how this country has been managed for the last half a century. For half a century, we have never succeeded to generate the finances that we need for our primary existence. we are always depending on others for that. And that's my contention. I say that is what should not continue. Because to be independent does not mean that you should be dependent on others for your survival.
Yes, you've mentioned this recently in the
yes.
adjournment debates, where you said that
so
you can go beg, you can develop by begging.
Our independence, and of course, where there is dependency, sovereignty is in question.
Absolutely, absolutely. Everybody knows that, isn't it? Really, but again,
the question is, which I don't agree with, that we don't have the means. It's not true. We have the means. Gambia is an agricultural country par excellence. For 50 years, we have not been able to develop our agriculture. We don't even need rains in this country. We have one of the most beautiful rivers in the world. We could use the waters of our river all the 12 months around.
That is true, but I've read somewhere that only 38% of our land is arable. how accurate is that?
No, we have.
It's all sorts of stories going on.
Even if I take that statistic to be correct, that 38% is enough to ensure our survival better than what we are now today.
But how was one going to do that? I mean,
there's too much arable land in this country. Do you know that there is more and more arable land is being made available? You know why? Because all those people who are supposed to till are going out of this country. This backway phenomenon, do you know how many Gambians are out of this country? You go take a trip into the country and go to some village. You find some village for only elderly people. All the young people are either out of this country or are here.
They're living.
They are
urbanization.
Here, where there is no job.
That's it. So how do you stem that drift from the rural to the urban? I mean, it's a phenomenon that all societies have seen,
means that
really.
You have to engage your economy. The productive sectors of your economy must be engaged in such a way as to make them apt to generate employment. And by generating employment is to generate revenue. You generate revenue, you generate employment, you generate revenue, you generate also employment.
But how do you do it? Do you have a sort of blueprint of what one is going to do so that we can get out of this cycle?
Let's take one thing, one sector which I am always talking about, fisheries, our river and our ocean. Have you ever heard the Gambia government providing a fishing vessel on the waters of this river or our waters?
Should it be government? I thought would that be private sector, private individuals?
No,
should
not
that
necessarily.
Be done by government?
Well, private sector can do it, but if they don't do it, why can't government do it? We all put money into the coffers of the nation. Part of that can be used to buy fishing vessels and all the fishing gears that are required for such a purpose, and then we employ people on the fishing vessel.
Because with this one, I was.
Do you know how much the fishing agreement we have with the EU, Europe? We have made an agreement to fish in our waters for, is it 3 years or 6 years?
Yes.
For a certain sum of money?
Yes.
Do you know how much money they are going to get?
Wasn't it about 55 million euros? 200 and something million euros. Yes.
Per annum?
Per annum.
Yeah, okay. So you can't do that. You think we can't do that?
Yes.
You can do that.
And then
instead of doing that, instead of allowing others to come and do that in our world by giving us pittance, because what they give us is inadequate as far as I'm concerned.
What about the worry that it's depleting some of these rare stuff?
Well, you see, you are talking about the problems. These are the eventual problems that are going to come up. You know, they are fishing, they are depleting.
So would you still go with that policy, given the cost? Cost benefit, any cost benefit analysis, would you?
It's not a good policy. That's what I'm saying. Haven't you had the debate in the National Assembly when we are talking about this agreement with the EU? I'm always against such matters. But the problem is, this country has been run in such a way for the last 50-something years that is the only thing they can do.
But did you have to vote on the fisheries agreement? Was there any votes in the National Assembly regarding the fisheries agreement we have with the EU?
Of course, there is always a vote.
So we approved
on matters.
So it seems National Assembly
majority
approved
always,
as well.
Majority carries the vote. That's a democracy.
Yes, but you personally voted against.
Whether good or not.
Did you vote against personally?
Why do you always ask me whether I vote against or not?
But it's important to know your politics. You're a party leader. You're an icon. Everybody needs to know your politics.
That's why I say you should be listening to debates, because if you had listened to the debates, you would have known the mind of every MP who was speaking. You would have known whether this person was going to vote for it or not.
But you know, I shouldn't second guess anything. It's for the viewers to determine. That's why I asked.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not referring to you as a person. When I say you, I'm talking to you.
Generally, the general you. Okay.
You representing the public.
Absolutely.
Yes, but that's why it is important for you to listen to your MPs. That's the only way you can know the mind, rather than asking me, did you vote for it or not?
But it's for the sake of our viewers, not for me. Yeah, maybe not all the viewers will have the time to go through.
It's not important. That's not important as far as I'm concerned. What is important is, if you had listened to debates, you would have known the mind of this particular individual about that particular problem.
But it's not for me to know the mind of somebody. I'm not sure, even sure whether one can really know the mind of somebody. I may know your views on things,
anybody who is listening to me now,
important to you.
Anybody who is listening to me now knows precisely what my mind is about the issues that I'm talking about. Unless, of course, you just close your eyes or your ears. But if you listen to me, you know straight away what my mind is about this fundamental issue.
But this is another opportunity for you to tell the viewers.
I don't mind. That is a simplistic way of talking. I don't need to come and say, I voted against, I voted for. And the person, if the person is intelligent, and say, well, why did you? That is why you should hear my mind, the expression of my thoughts about that particular problem. Then you will know automatically where I am. But if you don't listen to my output, and you want me to say whether I said yes or no, that is the last thing. For me, it's not even important to me. Sometimes I even express myself about matters. If I know if the majority is going to, that's not important. What is important is to say what I think this particular problem should be addressed. It's up to the rest. So it is important for people to know the mind when they are MP. That's why it is important. How would you vote for me next time? You don't even know how I'm talking, how I'm dealing, how I'm operating in the National Assembly. How are you going to determine whether or not you should vote for me again or not? You should hear me. Not by sitting there saying, oh, he voted for it, oh, he voted against. You can vote blindly. People have been voting blindly in this country for half a century. Don't you think so? We have been voting in this country blindly for half a century. You know what I mean by that? Because I said we have never had a government which was really committed to the development of this country for half a century, 50 good years. You don't have even a single fishing vessel on the waters of this republic. Not a single fishing vessel owned by the Gambia government. I'm not talking about private sector, that is private sector. But my concern is the public sector. That's why I am elected to talk about.
Absolutely.
But that's where they bring money for me to say how this money should be used. It is good private individuals should have.
Why somebody might say that perhaps that's a bit unfair to some extent. Perhaps with Jawara's government, at some point, given that what one had at independence, they even called it the improbable nation. One did quite well for what we inherited, the post-colonial reality. There was some movement.
Do you know that there was a fishing company under the Jawara government? Do you know there was a fishing company? We had.
We knew that. Wasn't it Obi Konate and others?
No, that's private. Obi Konate is I mean Gambia government fishing company.
Private companies in
there.
No.
No. Gambia government had a fishing company which was divested like GPMB.
So that was what I meant by it was a bit unfair to say that nothing really happened.
No, but why was it divested?
But there was some movement.
You didn't even know about it. That means that it was not performing because you didn't know about it. You didn't know about the existence. Maybe it existed just for a few months and then it disappeared. Is that what the type of thing that we need? That is very important to the productive sector of the economy. A fishing company with fishing vessels, with all the gears that are required for that purpose in this country for 50 years operating solidly, this country would not need to borrow money from anybody.
But you know about what they say about state-run enterprises and businesses.
Yeah, that is,
they don't work, apparently. There's a certain... people have gone against, you know, well, big governments, state investing in all sorts of things. Somehow it just doesn't work, it seems.
This is a spurious argument which does not hold water, because I can give you an example. Even though Russia, Soviet Union, existed for 70 years. Have you ever heard that they had unemployment problems in that country?
But it collapsed in 89. Eventually it collapsed.
What you are saying it collapsed. Has China collapsed?
Not yet. You do not know. Nobody can know.
Do you know that?
We do not know.
Do you know the countries that you think are the might are running on the back of Chinese economy?
There's an interdependence around the world. One knows that there's an interdependence around all things, but maybe it might be a bit too early to say much about China.
Mr. Mboj, okay, now, if somebody tells you you should privatize agriculture in the Gambia, what would be your position on that?
Yeah, one would have to get an expert. I'm not an expert on that, so it's really not for me to say anything about that. Maybe I should ask you. You are the politician who wants to...
So I'm an expert in agriculture.
Well, you are the politician, and you want to come...
Politicians are not necessarily
but you want to go to State House. You want to rule this country.
No, not necessarily.
Why go into politics? It's important that you rule so that you will implement your policies. To be in politics does not necessarily
mean you want to go to State House.
But why not?
Going to State House means what?
To run the country so that your program will be implemented. The outcomes you want, then possibly people will see it. But it's important for you to get there first.
Yes, but can't you do that without going to the State House?
Well, you can be, what, as an advocate? Because once I'm a political party, one assumes that you want to have the opportunity to implement your programs.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'll be an advocacy group if I do not want to win elections.
Yes. Yeah, but
you are a political party. You want to win votes.
No, but you know, the view that you want to go to the State House.
It's not meant in any pejorative term, but merely that you want to run, you want to win the elections and have the president coming from PDOIS so that you can implement your program.
I agree.
So that's the only point one is saying. But one didn't mean it in a pejorative term, as if that your ambition is just to be a State House. No. Much more than that. It's too deep. For me, State House is very deep. Really. I wonder.
I would have preferred if you were given the responsibility to run the affairs of this country. I would have preferred it put that way.
To what? You would have preferred it if you were given the responsibility to run?
I would have preferred you to have put it that way.
Okay.
Rather than wanting to go to State House.
Okay, fine. All right. I'm accepted. Granted. I accept.
It's not every president who has been to State House and they run their countries without going to State House.
Absolutely, as long as when this is the president, when one was using it there sort of figuratively, as you know, the president, that was really what one meant. but when it's in politics, really,
but essentially what I'm trying to say, and what I want you to understand, and what I want viewers to understand, is that nobody is saying that you should not take loans, but you should not take loans to the detriment of developing your country. Because whatever loan you take, it goes with interests, not one. And you start paying those interests even before you start paying the loan itself. So the more loans you take, the more you are making it impossible for you to generate revenue in your country primarily for development purposes. Because whatever you generate you have to pay back. And that is why that fishing company I told you about was divested in 1985. GPMB was divested. There, they were producing oil there before. When I was teaching in Bakau, oil was being produced in GPMB. They were making soap there. But all that was swept away Because of what? Because of indebtedness.
And was it this the time when the IMF was advising government to do that?
No, IMF came with their program. The program was developed by the IMF and the World Bank, not by the Gambia government. ERP was developed by them. And people think that it was meant to help this country. No, it was meant to make this country capable of paying loans. And that's why all those things, how can you develop a country by saying, okay, the productive sectors, divest them.
But you know
and then you workers lay them off. Those who are supposed to work and produce, we lay them off.
But you know that we depended on them so much that government really couldn't have gone against the IMF and the World Bank. Because most African governments also were subject to that.
I'm not saying that. I'm sorry, before even going again, the situation should not have even arisen. That situation should not have arisen. That's my contention. Because if you, like, GPMB, since GPMB was divested, now we are now in the trade season. Go there and see whether you know whether there is any trade season in this country. Before, when you are just a kilometer away from the Denton Bridge, you know that something is happening in Denton Bridge. Today is like a ghost house. Nothing is taking place there. And we are in the trade season. Right now, they are buying groundnuts. But you see nothing there. Why?
You tell me?
Because there is nothing there. What was happening there was divested. Since then, they could not put anything there. So groundnut production in this country, in fact, most of our groundnuts, I understand, most of them are now going out of this country to somewhere else, because the price outside is better than what it is here in this country. So you cannot stop any farmer from going to sell his or her produce where he or she thinks would have a better price.
But you as parliamentarians are seeing others, what can you do about the situation? I mean, of course, one understands that it's a democratic parliament. You're going to have different people from different parties and different views.
It is the government that should change policies, their policies, not parliament. We approve of policies, but it is not parliament to make policies. We don't make policies. We scrutinize policies. So it is up to the government to make policies, which will prevent such a situation.
I see. So all these policies, government policies now, they have to go through parliament, as you said.
Well, in normal circumstances, that is what it should be. But that's not what is happening.
But then what can parliament do about it? Because you are the authority. It should come through me. There must be sanctions, or what can parliament do about it?
You know, parliament can always say, they know what is happening. Parliament can say, come, do this. But if they don't come, are we going to put rope around their necks? But when the situation comes where a matter comes up, then we raise it, we talk about it. But in normal circumstances, every policy, government policy, well, should come to parliament for scrutiny.
But you're saying that it doesn't always come to parliament.
No, the policies don't come there. But in another way too, somebody will say, no, you don't need to. They don't need to bring it, because in the final analysis, you scrutinize the implementation of those policies. Somebody would say that. But bringing them to parliament is to help shape that policy, because it's adding value to it. But if it does not come also, in the final analysis, we keep on scrutinizing, because we have a project monitoring committee in the National Assembly. All government projects. There is a committee which is seeing to that, implementation of government projects. And every sector has a committee scrutinizing it. So the issue is, if they come, fine. But if they don't come also, they are still being scrutinized.
Yes. Recently, in one of the adjournment debates, I think it was around the MOU 3 years agreement, you advised, you appealed to your colleagues in the National Assembly not to be insulting. I wonder, what kind of a parliament do we have? It was, for me, it struck me, it was quite fascinating that there were insults that you had to appeal to them not to use insulting language. What was
no,
it?
maybe I will insult in a different way. Not, what I meant by that word in that particular context was that somebody was saying they would hold responsible the member parties of the coalition for the failure of if the 3-year thing fails. I said they should not insult us because they know what had happened. I said because, one, our position has always been very clear. First, the 3-year was not a person's idea, was an idea of the coalition. That was the coalition agreed. And the 3 years is not for Barrow. It is for anybody who won the primary. And it happened that he won the primary. Some of the candidates to the primary said if they won, they would serve only 2 years. That was one of them who said, I wanted only 2 years. And I'm 100% he would have done 2 years and would have resigned. But what had happened, you know, I have decided not to take part in the argument since 2007 because for me, people were closing their eyes to the truth.
Which was?
The coalition stopped existing since 2017. The coalition was built on 3 fundamental pillars. All those pillars were destroyed in 2017, so there was no coalition. And that is why
who destroyed them?
And that is why the president single-handedly appointed people and also fired them like the regime before him.
But what destroyed it? What destroyed it in 2017?
You know, the coalition was based on one. Whoever won. First, we defined what are we to do as a coalition when we win the election. We defined what and we saw that we could do that in 3 years. So we agreed that we would be together for 3 years. It's like to clean the country as it were, to clean the country as we are to create a legal ground for multi-party political contest. We say we could do that in 3 years. That was the first pillar. Second pillar, since we are a coalition, not a party, and the person we are put up is not a party presidential candidate, but a coalition presidential candidate. Power belongs to all of us. And to ensure that that coalition remains, that person alone, whoever won the election as president, should not have power to elect single-handedly people as ministers. That was also agreed. There was a committee established. President would have appointed ministers in consultation with that particular committee. Because we foresaw that since it was not a party president, if we didn't do it that way, what has eventually happened, because there was no coalition, that is my proof, it was because there was no coalition that the president could dismiss people at will. And nothing happened.
Absolutely, and that was one of the reasons perhaps why he would also decide to ignore the MOU agreement, because it had dissolved essentially by 2017.
Let me finish. I'm telling you, I've told you two pillars. Mm-hmm. The third pillar is this. He was asked to resign from his party in order to become a candidate for all the parties, and he did so. So we said it is also important that for parliamentary elections, parliamentary candidates will also not stand on party ticket, because if they do, they will be there for their parties and not for the coalition. So we should all stand as independent parliamentary candidates. That was the third pillar. So that there will be no confusion, because the president-elect feared if I had nobody in parliament, then my policies would not be implemented the way I wanted. So I need to have a support in parliament. So that is why they went against this idea of independent candidates for parliamentary elections for the coalition. And that is why...
That's it. And now the rest is history. Now even the president has got a national party, the National People's Party, so we've moved on till, we are told, till 2021. But with you, why did you go into politics? I mean, you were essentially an academic, a writer. I understand that you were a research fellow at the International Africa Institute, was it, in England? But in 1986, you resigned from all of you went into politics. You formed PDOIS, you along with Halifa Sallah and others. Why did you go into politics?
I went into politics because when I came back in 1978 from France, where I studied, I studied a particular domain with a view to coming back and develop that domain, because without that we are nowhere. Language. I studied, well, my first degree I did social science, philosophy and sociology, but then eventually I became more interested in linguistics, because I saw that as a better tool for me to use in this country to develop our languages. So before I came, I had a job, international appointment with a better salary more than anybody in this country at the time. But I rejected it, because before I came, UNESCO developed a center in the country, Curriculum Development Center, that's for curriculum development. And then part of the Curriculum Development Center was a unit consecrated to development of the national languages. But they didn't have anybody qualified to do that. So it was there, but nothing was happening. So I came. When I came, I was posted to the president's office. I said I was not going there. My director said, if you didn't go there, I will not pay you. He said, where are you going to go? I said, I'm going to curriculum development. He said, if you go there, I won't pay you. I said, okay, don't pay me, but I'm going there. I went there. Of course, then I was a qualified teacher. I should be having at least my qualified teacher's salary, but that also was, they were paying it anyhow they wanted. But me, I was enthusiastic about what I was going to do. That was developing our national language. We developed a writing system for Wolof, Mandinka, and Fular. These were the three that were chosen by the government at the time. So we developed materials that they refused to print. All our materials were handwritten. We wrote them hand with my colleagues. And we had experimental classes from here up to URR. So for 2 years we were producing our materials hand. But there was a printing place for the printing of this, they were not doing it.
Yeah.
So there were so many problems that in the end I said, I'm cutting it very short. In the end, I said there is a need to do something else in this country for this thing to be able to be done.
That's it. I'm told that we're nearly done. But it's interesting, since 1986, the formation of the party, somehow that widespread appeal, you don't seem to have, PDOIS doesn't seem to have that widespread appeal. When you talk to people individually, they will talk about, with you and Halifa Sallah and Sam Sarr, they're upright, highly intelligent, educated. Everybody talks about it, but yet you never have that widespread appeal so that you can have the opportunity to form the government. What do you attribute that to?
Well, what I know is that a party is a party if it does have a program. And we have a program, we have a manifesto, which we keep on revising. But the interesting thing is that wherever you go in this country, the only party that everybody agrees with what they say is what is good is our party.
But still, to translate that into votes, that's what we're talking about, isn't it, finally?
Well, that is up to you, you voters. Since you all agree that what we are saying is what is right, it is up to you to vote for it. If you don't vote for it, it's your business. So that's why I say,
thank you very much.
In reality, we have never lost any election in this country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sidia Jata. It's been a pleasure having you on The Viewpoint today.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, the viewers, for joining us on The Viewpoint today. Until next time, I'm Mahmoud Mbuj. Goodbye.